Okay, welcome, welcome. Good evening, Gobi Society. Today we are going to be tackling issues of sleep. That's right. Many of you are coming on. Welcome, welcome. We are going to tackle issues with sleep tonight. Why? Because sleep is so fundamentally important. And instead of just taking my word for it, tonight we are going to be speaking with Eva of My Sleeping Baby. And she and I have something in common, which is that there is a huge connection between sleep and anxiety. And sleep really is one of those fundamental jobs that we have as children grow and develop. And so often, sleep represents something that is going on with children. So if their sleep is not doing well, we have to understand it, we have to look at it, and we have to know as to what is going on, and maybe it's a telltale sign that there's something else that is brewing or that we have to understand together. And so I think it is really important that we bring on the sleep expert who's going to be able to talk about that, what she recommends. And while the general population that she speaks to may be younger than many of us, but the idea of what we can do about sleep is so important. And so it is really, I see that she is coming on. All right, let's do that. Here we go. Okay. Great. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. She's okay. Did you join? No, I invited you to come. Come on in. No. Try again. I think you have to, I'm not sure. But okay, so I guess there's still some technical difficulty, but hopefully soon we're going to have, okay, we're going to have Eva coming on. But essentially, there are several issues that come up when someone is struggling with their child related to sleep. And that could be anything from something that is an issue that's brewing. So there's something that, oh, here we go. It's summon request wasn't sent. Try again. Okay, try again. Okay. So either it could be something of that there's a trauma and the child has experienced something and that's why it's resonating with them and they can't fall asleep. Or oftentimes it's an indication that there is something more of either ADHD or depression or something else that's going on. Or, okay, go out and come back in, request to join the live. Thank you. Okay, try again. Or there is an anxiety there. And a lot of times it has to do with separation anxiety. But what I have been finding and what I've been fielding with so many of the people is that, homesickness in camp is a huge issue. I hear about it pretty much every day. What can I do? My child is homesick at camp, or what can I do? I'm getting reports that everything is fine, but nighttime is not as easy, not so fine. What can I do? And so, yeah, there is a lot of connection between things that are going on, life experience, and sleep. And so, if we can hear a little bit about what can be done, I think that can go a really long way in helping us to help our children. So that connection is really important. And I'm just going to give it one more minute because I think that Eva's trying to get back on. So let's see what happens. Okay. So I put out there also from all of you to understand like what the issues are with sleep. And So there's the homesick people, and then there's also a lot of your kids are home for the summer, and the regulation is off, like the schedule is off. Kids that would generally go to bed at a certain hour, or parents that have found that generally speaking, they have a set time when they're asking their child to come back in, curfew or going to sleep, and all of that is kind of shifted. And that often creates an issue because kids are getting used to staying up later, and so when they do have to go to sleep, it's harder. And I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. When it comes to electronics and just the brain waves, it is very hard oftentimes if you don't have your child shut off their electronic device at a certain hour, then it really impacts on the brain waves, so that it's harder for them to then fall asleep when they're being asked to fall asleep. But there's one other piece, and I think that that's something that Eva and I were going to talk about. And so sorry, it won't let me request to join. Huh? Okay. I don't know. That does anybody have any suggestion for what Eva could do? I don't exactly know. Let's see. Oh,
Okay.
there we go. Okay, welcome. Okay, technical difficulties.
So sorry about
Okay.
that.
So yeah, so I gave the introduction about what, first of all, hi, welcome. Um,
Thank you.
and we were just talking about that some of the issues this summer that have come up with regard to sleep, and you're the sleep expert, really, I kind of like generally summed it up by saying homesickness and not being able to fall asleep because there's something on the brain, which is
Yeah.
one thing that oftentimes, like, why isn't a young child able to fall asleep? So there's something on the brain, right? So
Yeah.
homesickness, being away from home, and separation anxiety, right? So separation is like a very, very big piece.
Yeah.
And that's something that we hear about all the time. I was just starting off by saying that before we even get into children not being able to sleep, I mean, do you have any comments or anything about like just separation anxiety that maybe we can start to flesh out for those people that are watching whose children are kind of far away from home, so their separation anxiety is realistic, and very, very relevant. So
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, listen, I think that the goal here for, your little ones who are away would be to try and keep some familiarity from home while they're away. So maybe perhaps there might be, a pillow they like to sleep with, a blanket, a comfort item of some kind, even having some kind of quick wind down routine before bed that might be familiar to them at home that they can continue with while they're at camp. They wash their face and then they brush their teeth, and then, maybe they might journal a little bit. Like I know when I was a kid, like I kept a journal, even though I took the journal to camp with me. And it gave me a sense of familiarity, like, okay, home might be a little bit far away, but there is still that, it gave me that closeness to home so that it didn't feel like I was in this completely separate world far away from my parents.
Right, and
So
that's
that
so
that helped
great.
me.
I love that. It's interesting. Just so a few things that you picked up on. So one of them, in terms of familiarity with home. So I had mentioned, and I love this product, but there is this. Well, there are a few different ones, but one of the things that I really like is you can get this like little contraption. It's in the shape of a heart, and you can record the same message, a message that you would tell your kids before bed, and then they can take it with them to camp, and they can listen
Yeah.
to it. So like it sets that routine. Like I know many kids have, like, they have a song, or they have a, like, I love you forever, I love you to this, and it's like it's just a very familiar type of thing.
Yeah.
I really like the concepts of, and this was the second thing that I was just kind of raising in terms of having a consistent routine. I think that's so important. And
Yeah.
oftentimes, like, we underestimate the value of just getting into that same, like the body going into that same routine at the same time. Kids today, like the ones that are not even at sleepaway camp, also are off their schedule. And parents, no wonder, like, yes, you're letting your kids stay up much later than usual, and you're letting your child like play electronics more than right before bed more than usual, and then you want them that they're going to be able to go to sleep in a usual way. Like, that's very hard. So I love what you're saying.
Right.
Like, have the brushing your teeth, like at least keep that routine in a very consistent way, and you're taking that with you wherever you go,
Yeah.
which is like really, really
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah. And you know what? Even when families are traveling with younger ones, like this applies to when you are out of town as a family. And maybe you've got younger kids who aren't in sleepaway camp, but you're at a cottage. Here we don't have bungalow colonies in Toronto. We have cottages.
I
So
love
we all go
it.
to
It sounds so great. It's like, it's the same thing, but yet the way it sounds in a cottage is like 12 steps above, like very elite, and it's like a cottage.
Well, there's different levels of
Okay.
cottages.
Okay.
Some that are a little bit more rustic than others, but regardless, here when people go to their cottages and they're asking me, the same thing, we're going to be at the cottage for the summer. What do I do so that I can make sure that my little one's sleep remains intact? And so that's one of the things that I tell people, which is to make sure that the routine that you have for your baby, your toddler, your preschooler at home, that you stick with that even when you're away, because it offers that level of familiarity to home, which is going to be inherently comforting to them. And then on top of that, what a routine does is it cues your body, it cues your brain that sleep time is coming, so that you're not expecting your child to go from playing to you must go to sleep right now, right? Like, that's just not going to happen. That's just not how we're designed as humans. We need that wind down time, whether it's a few minutes long, whether it's, for our little ones, it might be 10 or 20 or 30 minutes long, but they need that, that set routine in place to help that wind down process go more smoothly and that transition to sleep time go more smoothly. So I would say this applies, both to the older ones who are away, as well as the younger ones that might be away with the parents.
Now,
as well.
you had mentioned also, like, in terms of journaling when you were younger. And I think that, when we look at what are the possible reasons that kids can't sleep. So one is the anxiety, the separation anxiety, but another one is they have something on their mind that they weren't able to kind of get out, and emotionally, like, they're not ready. And so there is always a good time and place, like before bed, to make sure that they're able to get it out. Now, if they're with their parents, then, and their parents have a nice routine with them, never skip the bedtime routine if you can't, like, I think that's very important. But if they're not with their parents, if they're on a trip, or if they're in camp, or if they're with friends, then it's nice to be able to have also something that's going to allow them to get it out. So journaling is one. I also, if you have a little box, I recommend to kids, have a box by your bed, and before bed, write out. So these are the things that, like, any of the worries, any of the things that kind of bother, put it in, kind of like fold it up in the paper and put it in the box, and just know, okay, so when I write to my parents, I can tell them that, or when I speak to them, I like, kind of like prolonging when I'm able to, or, during the daytime when I'm with my friends and I want to emote and like, I want to whatever, I'll be able to. And it's so interesting. I had this patient last week tell me that she was away up in, not in a cottage, but in one of these, one of these bungalow colonies. And like, there's such a thing. And I guess because I don't do that, but, at any point you could just go into someone else's bungalow colony, like, just come on in, like, doors are open. It doesn't matter what it is. And she's an early riser, but like to the point where she was waking up at 6:45 a.m. So at 6:45 a.m., she thought, you know what? Like, I have something on my mind. Like, I really want to be able to share it with my friends. So she literally, like, went into someone else's bungalow, like, went in, and her friend was up, and I'm like, are you sure this is okay? She's like, you don't understand, Dr. B. Like, this is allowed. Like, this is what happens in a bungalow colony. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, wow. She's like, yeah, but I took your advice. I let it out. I'm like, at 6:45 a.m. at someone else's bungalow colony? Like, are you sure? I definitely didn't say that. But it was like, but like, the idea really is they're like, sometimes that's one of the reasons, like even a little one, there's something that's like on their mind and they need to get it out. And so that should
Yeah.
also be part of the process as well.
100%. You know, a very common bedtime battle with the preschoolers, like the parents, the moms of the preschoolers that I work with, is that they'll say to me, Eva, anytime I tell, you know, my son, my daughter that it's time to go to sleep, they'll always have something else to tell me. They'll always try and, you know, push off bedtime because they have another question, they have another story, they have to tell me one more thing, and it's driving me crazy. And then it just means they just keep pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. And so what I almost always tell them in that sort of situation is to build that in to the bedtime routine. So have that, you know, near the end where you know what, for these little ones, we can call it like special connection time, you know, special Ruvain time, special Shimon time, you know, where for that 5 minutes or 10 minutes when, you know, Shimon is lying in his bed, for that period of time, you can ask mommy any questions you want to ask me. Or maybe they're not asking questions, maybe they want to tell you a story. Okay, so now you can tell me all about what happened in your day. And if you want to tell me something, you can share it with me right now. And so build it in, because obviously your little one has something to tell you, or he wants that time. He's got actual questions to ask, or maybe he just wants the attention. But either way, it's all age appropriate. It's all normal. It's all healthy, and it's all fine as long as it is within the context of, you know, a healthy, relaxing wind down routine. And when you build that in, so you know, okay, bedtime is 7 o'clock, and so I need to make sure that he's in bed by 6:50, so that by 7 o'clock, we can be done schmoozing and then we can say goodnight, you know, then this way you're not going to get frustrated because you've built that into the routine. You know that from 6:50 until 7, you and Shimon are sitting in bed and schmoozing,
Right.
talking, you know, he's sharing his thoughts with you. He's asking you questions. He's, you know, you're having that special time, and then this way it's a win-win situation for everyone. So that's typically something
now,
that
it's hard because I think as kids get older, they have, you know, like conversations do last a lot longer. Well, at least we hope so. You know, like we try here to build up relationships with, you know, with our teens, our tweens, our, you know, older kids. And so it's like, well, I finally got them talking. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not doing a 10-minute thing. But I think that
no, I'm talking about the younger ones.
of course.
These are the
Right.
olds.
But I do think realistically, you know, that's really important. And even to structure it, you know, like you were saying, so you have 10 minutes time, you know, and, you know, it doesn't only have to be the bad stuff, you know, okay, so tell me all the bad, but, you know, like what I've mentioned before is highlight and low light, something that good and something that wasn't as good. And if we model for them and we speak to them and just like give them a little bit of like, oh, so let me tell you my highlight and low light, then it's kind of sets the stage for then they can say it. And just like, you know, I gave a few words, then, you know, then they'll give a few words. But yeah, you know, it's a nice time. It's a very special time when they're, you know, have your undivided attention, mommy time.
Yeah.
It's like, it's very special. And I think that it does. It definitely helps, like, just let that anxiety go down. But, you know, parents ask all the time, and I think that this gets into another piece, which is, you know, how long should I, you know, is it okay if I do this? You know, it's like mommy anxiety starts to come in too. And I think that, you know, I think if we start off by saying, you know, mommies need to be sleeping and mommies need to, like, their own anxiety has to be going down. That is like fundamental to any child and their process happening, is that the parents themselves are, you know, giving to themselves what they need so that they don't go into any sleep routine, A, being like really tired, but B, you know, just being so nervous, like, oh my gosh, like, how's it going to go? Is this going to be okay? Is it, you know, is the nighttime going to be forever? Is this going to take forever? Like, that is not a great way for any child to, like, the environment is just not, that's not, you know, that's not a workable environment.
The child's going to feed off of that.
Right.
They're going to feed off of that, and then they're going to get anxious, and they're going to, you know, feed off of mom's anxiety, and then push back even more because they want that connection time around bedtime. And if they're not getting it, they're going to push for it more. So I absolutely agree, you know, to make it as peaceful and relaxing and enjoyable as possible. And then it will go more smoothly and you will get less bedtime battles as a result of it, when you yourself are calm, cool, and collected.
Right. And I imagine that even just speaking to the parents, sometimes it's not about what exactly they're going to do, but just the idea that they're following something so that they go into like any bedtime routine saying, you know what, like, okay, I've got this. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be an all night. I might even still be able to go out really late at night with my husband, somewhere once the kids are sleeping. And then, it could very well be that just like having that idea, like, I've got this, like, I believe in it, it's going to be okay. Just that sets a nice stage and a tone that allows for it to actually go okay.
Yeah, no, 100%. Kids, they know when we're anxious and we're nervous and we're on edge, they know. We can't fool them.
Right. No, not at all.
We might try to, but it doesn't, there's no point. So I agree.
Right. The idea, on Gobi Society, we do a lot of mnemonics. So one of the mnemonics that I do about just sleep routine is rest, right? So R stands for rules. And I'm curious to know what your rules, but I have 3 major rules of sleeping that I generally recommend to parents. So the first is that the eyes should be shut, the head on the pillow, and there's no talking. And if the kid follows those rules of sleep, then then the parents will then do a sleep routine that that accommodates whatever they're up to. But like that, those are like the fundamental in my practice. Those are the fundamental rules of sleep. Do you have any like specific rules of sleep that you recommend or that that you advocate about?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, one of the really big puzzle pieces that I look at is the little one's schedule. So this applies, by the way, across the board to, babies, children, adults of all ages, but it's especially applicable to children because we need to make sure that they are napping when they need to be napping, if they're still napping, that they go to bed for the night when they need to be going to bed for the night, and they're not getting overtired in the process. Because when babies and young children especially are up for too long before bedtime, they're not napping enough during the day, and they become overtired, what happens is that their bodies are going to start producing higher levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone.
Yeah, exactly.
That your nervous system secretes. And then what happens is that when we have higher levels of cortisol in your system, it makes it significantly harder to wind down. It makes it harder to fall asleep, and it makes it much harder to stay asleep, and it makes it much harder to, sleep that full night. And so it's absolutely crucial. We can have the most solid routine down pat, but if your little one's bedtime is an hour too late, it might be all for nothing, because at the end of the day, his cortisol is through the roof. He's on his third, bout of energy, chasing his tail, right? And needed to be in bed an hour earlier. And then as a result, that's going to make bedtime an uphill battle on a good day. So being very mindful of getting your little one to bed early. Again, that's relative.
And I think the research really shows that all ages, there's like a certain critical time that like there's certain hours, like not all time is the same. So not all hours are the same. If the child's going to be going to bed at 12 o'clock, but their critical time is that their body really needs to go to bed at 8 o'clock, their sleep, even if they sleep the same amounts of time, it's not as valuable to their body.
I find that there is some flexibility in that sense. Like, I'm not of the belief that every single 3-year-old must be in bed by 7. 7:30 is okay. 8 o'clock is okay. I'll tell you, but I agree. Midnight, not okay. That's not going to work.
For teenagers, right. And for teenagers, it's more like their body set like later, so that they're naturally going to bed later. So 10, 11, 12 o'clock is fine. But anything like after that is really going to be a detriment to them. It's not as helpful their sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then they might sleep in until 11 a.m. the next day, but they're going to wake up feeling like garbage.
Right.
So yeah, it's absolutely the same thing. So, a 3-year-old, for example, just to kind of give you an idea, a typical 3-year-old needs approximately 12 hours of sleep over a 24-hour period. So when I hear about a 3-year-old who's not napping anymore, who's going to sleep for the night for 8 o'clock and wakes up at 6:30 the next day, that doesn't work.
No,
That schedule's
right.
not working anymore. That's not enough sleep. That 3-year-old has to be going to bed a solid hour earlier, taking into account that, she's in, let's say this 3-year-old is in school the whole day or now is in camp the whole day, isn't napping anymore. Yeah, that 8 o'clock bedtime, even if she has, and I'll hear, oh, but she's got older siblings and she's not playing with her older siblings till 8 o'clock. I don't care.
Right.
That doesn't matter.
Right.
That's not enough sleep. And then that is a child who's going to build up a sleep deficit. And when you build up a sleep deficit, it means it's a vicious cycle where the more overtired you become, the higher your cortisol levels get. The higher your cortisol levels get, the more overtired you become, the more you fight sleep, the less you sleep overnight, and then you become more and more and more overtired unless we jump in and address the root of the problem. So here, in this particular situation, the fact that the child is not napping anymore, which is typically fine with a 3-year-old, but then is going to bed too late, that's going to create, first of all, you're going to likely also start getting, some epic temper tantrums.
Temper tantrums, bad mood, inattention, distraction. When sleep, right. And like sleep could really mimic some really heavy duty, like problems in attention, in anxiety, in mood. That is definitely one of the first questions that I ask when someone will come into my office and they're complaining that their child is moody, whatever. And I always take a full detailed understanding of how much sleep and what's going on with the sleep. Yeah, I also find 100%. That even though like one kind of fuels, like you were saying, it fuels into the next. I'm of the belief that when someone does something 3 times, you create a template in their head. And so that becomes their pattern response. That becomes their pattern behavior. So then you're dealing with like a pattern and and that is even harder when once you have a trend, like it is way harder, it's something that's kind of more concretized. So
it's absolutely fixable though. I want to emphasize that it is absolutely fixable if your child, and then half the time, a lot of the time the families that are reaching out to me for help might have that scenario, and on top of that 3-year-old is taking forever to fall asleep at bedtime, doesn't know how to fall asleep by themselves, is waking up at night as well, and then is also waking up at 6:30 for the day. It's not working. That child is not getting enough sleep over a 24-hour period. And so, one of the very first things that I'm looking at is what kind of schedule is that child on, because a lot of the time, there's something that has to be tweaked. And, to your point, what you were saying that, the very first thing you're asking when you hear about a child who's moody, I've had clients where they've told me that their child was, unofficially diagnosed with ADHD based on their symptoms. Now, they weren't old enough to receive an official diagnosis at the time, but they were told by their developmental pediatrician or a psychologist or someone, based on these symptoms, I'm seeing lots of hyperactivity. There was no ADHD. The child was flipping tired.
Yeah, and I've had it not just with ADHD, but I've had it with mood issues and lots of anxiety. Yeah. And yes, anxiety and sleep, as we're saying, there really is a connection. And so if someone's 100%. More anxious, they're not going to be able to sleep. And if someone's not sleeping, they're not going to, they're going to be more anxious. But like, literally, it wasn't a diagnosis. It was literally because sleep was so disrupted.
And sleep deprivation, what it does is it mimics, it shows it's symptoms, like the symptoms of sleep deprivation and symptoms of something like ADHD in a young child majorly overlap. Right. And so it's so easy to misdiagnose a child for ADHD when really they're not naturally dealing with hyperactivity. Right. They are sleep deprived, and they don't need, that's the intervention 100%. That they need.
Right. So once we have, R is for rules, as you're mentioning. I think schedule is great. E to me is energy level. And that means that, like, and you can speak to this, some kid that is using up their energy and they're really efficient in the daytime hours and like getting their energy out and using their activity level, I find that those kids are more prone to being able to have, when they are winding down, to be able to have a much better night's sleep. And so especially
Yeah.
those kids that are hyperactive, like if you could do something for your kid, it's really engage them in the day so that they have, their energy out, so that when it is time for them to do the wind down, they can really do it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you know what? I mean, thankfully, a lot of us, I mean, here anyways, around here, like a lot of us have our kids in camp. And I find that like a day camp, when I say camp, sorry, I mean like my oldest is 10. So
Okay.
she's not quite, I think next year
Okay.
is when we're probably going to, look at overnight camp. But, this year, all my kids are in day camp. And, I find that, yeah, like day camp, you can kind of just check that off, knowing, okay, what are your kids doing? They're running outside, they're playing sports, they're swimming, they're going to splash pads, they're, they're doing Slurpee walks, like they're coming home exhausted and sweaty and so happy. Yeah, you're setting them up.
Right.
For hopefully a really, really good night's sleep, provided that everything else is properly in place.
Do you find that you're being asked less questions in the summer hours? I'm just wondering then in the school hours where kids are definitely not using all of their energy and not having the outdoor sunlight and and the sun sets way earlier. Like, do you find that there's really that connection?
Well, so I'll tell you, it's interesting you ask, because I live in Toronto, which is usually a really wonderful thing, because before COVID, I really loved living here. But, unfortunately, it's been like nonstop. It was nonstop lockdowns here. Thankfully, we seem to be, moving past it, and, things are now starting to open up and we're getting some normalcy back. But my kids were in virtual school from January, not because I chose, because the schools were all locked down here, from January until June with a month and a half off. So like January until mid-February, they were online, meaning in front of a screen all day. And then from mid-February until Pesach, they were in school, and then they went off for Pesach, and then they came back from Pesach. They were in school one day after Pesach, and then the government shut them all down, and they were shut down till the end of June, until the end of the school.
Gosh.
So in addition to the fact that it was awful for everybody, it did mean that I was getting really interesting phone calls, phone calls that I was ordinarily not getting, families that were really struggling with their, kindergarten age kids to go to sleep, who were normally not struggling in that department. And that it's considering these, kindergarten age kids were in front of screens the whole day, because, apparently virtual kindergarten is a thing. I don't know in what world that's a thing, but apparently it's a thing here. And so these poor kids were on screens, the entire day. And then on top of that, it was the winter time and everything was closed and it was freezing cold outside. And so, yes, sometimes parents would, make the effort to still get their kids outside, but a lot of time they couldn't. The parents were working and had no support. And oh my goodness, I mean, that's a whole, I could go, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but basically, to answer your question, yes, that absolutely resulted in sleep disruptions in kids that ordinarily were going to bed just fine, because they were getting all the stimulation that they needed. But here in this situation, not only were they not getting that physical activity, the intellectual stimulation, they were in front of a screen. They were on Zoom for school all day, which cannot be healthy for a child of any age, let alone a young child. So, I mean, this is, of course, a very, very, very extreme situation that, for the record, the Hospital for Sick Children has come out with like a massive report, bashing the government down to the ground for keeping schools closed because of the end result of it. So this is a very, very, very extreme example to show that the answer to your question is yes, it absolutely can impact things. It can absolutely make sleep significantly more challenging. But I also want to assure parents, because then I want to be careful, because I know that it's very easy for parents to then start worrying, like, oh my God, is my child getting enough stimulation? You know, I took him to the park for 2 hours. Should he have been at the park for 4 hours? You know, and I want you to know that, like, to stimulate a child, it doesn't mean that they have to be, you know, playing around at the park like all day, every day, engaging in something, right? It just means that, yes, it's obviously easier during the summer months when there is camp and beautiful weather and whatnot to keep a kid active than when it is, you know, the dead of winter, like sub-zero temperatures. All the more so when everything else is closed.
Right. And I do believe, again, and, you know, my patients, the teens, the tweens are not always so happy with me, but an hour or two before bed, the screen time really does need to shut off, because
100%.
Totally, please, you know, the sleep expert, please substantiate what I'm saying. Very, you know.
100%. Because what happens is that when we are in front of screens, especially the phone, especially a tablet, like a screen, I don't think, like, a TV is still, it's bad, but it's not as bad as a phone or a tablet because they're right in front of your face. And so what it does is it suppresses your body's production of melatonin, which is that hormone that makes you sleepy. And so when your melatonin production is lower, then what basically happens is that it tells your body that it's not time to go to sleep when it actually is. And then what can happen is that you can get yourself in this really vicious negative cycle where you are in front of a screen. The screen is tricking your body into telling you that you're not tired. And so you end up, rather than going to bed for, let's say, 11, you end up pushing off your bedtime till 1 or 1:30. You're not getting good quality sleep. You're overtired. You're not getting enough sleep over a 24-hour period. You wake up feeling like you got hit by a truck, and then you don't end up feeling great. And then it leads to all kinds of other, you know, yicky mood situations that I'm sure you see in your practice all the time. And it all stems from really crummy sleep. So yes, 100%, you know, pretend like this is 1990 where, you know, there's no, the only screen was, you know, a TV, like one TV, you know, this big. And not coincidentally, I don't think we had the same type of sleep issues then than we did now. You know, in 1990, I was 4 years old. And so when I was a 4-year-old, I was watching, I remember Sesame Street was on from 5 until 6. Every single day. And so that was like my screen time. And that was my screen time for a number of years because Sesame Street was amazing. And then that was basically it. Right. And that was, and then the teenagers, of course, you know, outgrew Sesame Street at some point. I'm sure they had, you know, their own shows that they were watching, but it was like that one TV. And as a result, we didn't have the same types of sleep issues that we have now. So yes, 100%. And this applies to adults as well. You know, if anyone listening in is a parent and they struggle to fall asleep at bedtime, you should absolutely make a rule for yourself. You know, if you're saying, oh my gosh, I can't, I'm too addicted to my phone, I need to unwind on my phone, even start with 30 minutes. Just 30 minutes before bedtime, turn off the phone and do something other than stare at a screen. Anything. I'll take anything. Doesn't matter what. You can journal, you can read a book, you can, you know, you can do yoga, like you can literally do anything. You know what I started doing during our January dead of winter lockdown is I started doing paint by numbers.
Nice.
And good. So relaxing. If I tell you, I started doing that because, of course, it goes without saying that when like the entire economy shuts down and your kid's school is closed and you're still working and it's the dead of winter and everything is closed and you're stuck in your house as a prisoner, your stress levels are gonna, you know, start to inch up a little bit, right? Like even on a good day. And it's so funny because it's like, it's like these paint by number companies all of a sudden started advertising,
For
came up on my
sure.
Facebook
Oh,
news.
yes.
It's like they knew, okay, anybody in Ontario now has stress levels through the roof. They're going to be bored out of their minds. Let me clog their news feed with as many ads for paint by numbers. And you know what? It works. I bought.
Yes.
I bought from the person who advertised to me. I was like, that's really, really smart. And it's such a relaxing, wonderful, like pre-bedtime activity. And I would like listen to music or listen to a share or like do something, while, kind of mindlessly painting. And I can't even tell you.
There's that. And I also find that, like,
it got me through that lockdown.
For sure. Something else that was also very popular was knitting. It became like huge. And also you could order the different colors and the string and the tutorial. And there was like just really big, again, that method of expression, that mindless, but it's very relaxing and it's not stimulating and it's a very different experience. So energy, and especially the energy, E is for energy, that really like the energy from the screens and the energy that you use. The S, as we mentioned, is speaking, talking out your feelings, letting it out, a kid having the amounts of time that they need. Parents also just being able to let out for themselves, just really, that talking moment that you have with your kid, don't give that up. That's not where you skimp on for time-wise. Like, make sure that gets built in. And, like I had mentioned, that if a kid is away in camp, there's still definitely ways that they can express, they could get it out. Either in their, their feeling box or in a journal or with that, just hearing their parents' voice, which is good. And then T is for timing. As we had mentioned, not all time is the same. You want, like you said, the circadian rhythms, certain times are better for kids to be going to sleep. Not all time is the same. And I don't know if you recommend this, but I found this to be very helpful with patients, like those young kids that their rhythm is off, so they get up really early. Like I had that one patient who went to their neighbor, but okay, no. But then also like that, there's a very cute traffic clock that is red, yellow, and green. And so a child who doesn't really know their timing very well, as long as it's red or yellow, you do not come out of bed. But at green, the day is sun, because otherwise, like now, at 5 o'clock in the morning, it is bright. And so like, if you're only going by, like how bright it is outside, not a great idea. And then again, like not all timing is the same, but if we start to train our kids, to be able to handle and to know and to stretch their timing, to make sure that, either go back to sleep because it's still on red, or, or stay in bed, but like, chill out and relax, both at at both ends, both in the evening and in the morning. I think that, that also goes a long way.
100%. So I know, my American clients, they all use that, red, yellow, green clock. Here in Canada, a very popular product on the market is called the Grow Clock. GRO. It's a British company, based in the UK, that I don't think ever made its way to the US, which is why none of my American clients know what the heck a Grow Clock is. But all the Canadian ones are like, oh yeah, of course, a Grow Clock. But it's the same thing where, so we use Grow Clocks here, where basically, like the face of the clock is a sun, and so you set it so that when it is morning, the clock is yellow, the sun is like shining, and like it's, the eyes are open, and it signals, it uses that color and imagery to tell the child it's time to wake up. And then when it's nighttime, the clock is still blue. And like the star, sorry, it's not a sun, it's a star, and the star is sleeping.
That's so cute. I love that.
It's very, very cute. Yes. And it really is a fantastic tool to, teach a child to stay in bed until morning. And it's interesting, I use my language carefully. I tell the parents, I say, don't tell them that you need to sleep until the clock turns yellow. Tell them that you have to stay in bed until the clock turns yellow. Because then when you tell them you need to sleep, they're going to say, well, I'm not tired. I don't want to sleep.
And it's a pressure because you can't just put yourself back to sleep. Like, that's hard.
it might be it might be 5 a.m. But like, no, mommy, I'm done sleeping. But you see, this is where, you know, this is where like it comes in handy when you're a little bit smarter than your 5-year-olds, because, or your 3-year-olds, however old the child is, because when it is 5 o'clock in the morning and the schedule is down pat and your child's not overtired and, you know, you've got all those puzzle pieces in place, and you tell your child, you must stay in bed quietly until the clock turns yellow, and it's 5 a.m. and your child's tired, guess what's going to happen when they're lying in bed quietly, not making a word, and it's the middle of the night? They're going to fall back to sleep.
Right.
You know, we're not going to tell them that. We're not going to tell them that, because then they're going to, you know, want to fight back. Well, I don't want to go back to sleep. Fine, you don't have to go back to sleep. You just have to be quiet. That's the rule. That's it. And then as long as they're not waking up at 5 a.m. because, you know, they're overtired or there's other things going on, if they're just waking up out of habits, then yes, telling them you just have to stay in your bed quietly until the clock turns yellow, I find is a really helpful tool and strategy to address that specific situation.
Now, if a child does not want to, you know, again, we might have to put them on a behavioral system or work with it, because if they're like, nah, I don't care, then, you know, then again, we have to kind of look at all the different, you know, ramifications and parameters, and
Right.
you know, figure that out. And if a child is old enough to be able to make that decision and knows what time, I oftentimes find that, you know what, you know, trying to maintain, again, a very quiet, you know, if there's something by your bed that is already prepared just in case, and you don't have to then, you know, wake up and come out of bed, you know, like, I think that the more advanced prep we do, the better off, you know, any situation is going to be. And of course, you know, we're talking about just, you know, normal situations, not situations of, you know, crazy amounts of anxiety or, you know, other things that are going on. That, of course, you know, tune in. We'll be addressing at a different time. Now, before, because we don't have so much time, you have this, I mean, you're a sleep expert, and you have this incredible something that you're going to be launching. I would love to be able to, you know, please let everybody know about it, because this is something very special.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a free webinar that teaches exhausted moms of babies and young children how to get their little ones consistently sleeping 11, 12 hours at night so that they can go back to being functioning humans again. So I would invite all of you, if you identify as that exhausted mom of a baby and a young child, maybe your little one is taking forever to fall asleep at bedtime, maybe they're waking you up at night one too many times, maybe they're giving you, you know, short, crummy, unpredictable naps, and you just need more sleep, and your little one needs more sleep. Check out this webinar. Send me a DM, and I can send you a link to the webinar, or you can just head to the link in my bio. I've got it linked there. And I would love to have you watch that class. You can watch it at any time, and it really, really will get you off on the right foot to getting yourself a consistent night's sleep that you and your little one both need.
Wow, that is so incredible, because I know so many people, you know, that have you to thank for all of this help, and you're giving a free webinar to really get them to understand and to give them, you know, the strategies and the tools that they need to be able to make their sleep routine with their little one go well. That is terrific. So we're going to be, you know, also, you know, you'll send us the link. We will definitely, you know, keep everybody, all the followers to know, and to, you know, and to really make use of this. It's amazing. Really, really incredible. You know, as the sleep expert, guys, I'm telling you, give of yourself, like, give the time. This is like such an incredible opportunity here. So very great. And thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, this is terrific. You know, there's always that carryover, that crossover between young ones, you know, middle-sized age kids and big kids and adults. And, you know, that sleep is like one of that universal principle that just, you know, covers everybody. We all need it. We all need to do it efficiently, effectively, and consistently. So, wow. So thank you, sleep expert Eva, for coming on today. And guys, really check out this webinar. It's going to be amazing. So really terrific.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
All right.
And yeah, if anyone has any questions, you know, needs any extra support, just send me a DM, reach out to me. It's always me answering my DMs. Wow. And we can chat further.
Okay, awesome. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.